Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredibly strategic ways we humans adapt to being apart and the hidden nuances of the language we use when we finally reconnect. Whether you're living miles away from a partner, separated from your best friend, or just, trying to navigate the modern maze of digital communication, the science behind how we bridge that physical gap is literally mind-blowing. All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to cover the distance paradox, the intimacy process, adaptation and idealization, how communication media matters, the language of reunion, and we'll wrap up with navigating inclusive communication. Section 1. The distance paradox. Look, we all know the universal struggle of being away from people we care about. Maybe it's a semester abroad, a crazy career move, a military deployment, or just the reality of modern life. Being apart is tough. And it absolutely forces us to confront this age-old question every single time we send a late-night text, right? Does absence really make the heart grow fonder? Or is that just a little lie we tell ourselves to feel better about the distance? Well, get ready for a pretty huge academic twist. The general public, and honestly, historically, even a lot of scholars, have firmly believed that frequent face-to-face contact is absolutely crucial for emotional attachment. They basically stamped long-distance relationships as doomed. But research actually proves the complete opposite. Long-distance couples report equal and sometimes even better levels of trust and satisfaction compared to geographically close couples. That's wild, right? Distance can actually foster deeper intimacy. Section 2. The intimacy process. So to understand why this massive paradox even exists, we need to look under the hood at exactly how intimacy is built on a day-to-day basis. Researchers use a framework called the Interpersonal Process Model of Intimacy, or IPMI. This basically shows us that intimacy isn't just this static, magical state of being in love. No, it's a highly active, transactional process. Think of it like a game of tennis. It's a back and forth of sharing something personal and having that specific thing validated by the other person, over and over again. Here's how that process plays out step by step. Step 1 is the disclosive act. You share a personal thought or a feeling. Step 2 is the responsive act. Your partner responds, showing they care and understand. But Step 3 is the real game changer, the perceptual act. You, as the original discloser, actually have to feel subjectively understood. If there's a breakdown at any of these 3 stages, intimacy literally halts in its tracks. Section 3. Adaptation and idealization. So if you're separated by hundreds or thousands of miles, how on earth do you keep this 3-step process alive? The crucial point here is that partners are highly motivated to transform their frustrating situation. They do this through behavioral adaptation. Since they can't just hang out on the couch together, long-distance partners proactively open up way more than geographically close couples do. They strategically adapt to overcompensate for all those missing miles. But wait, there's a second mechanism kicking in here: idealization. Because of the physical gap, distance literally gives partners the space to fill in the blanks with some seriously positive assumptions. It turns out long-distance partners perceive the other person as being way more disclosing and responsive than they technically are. It's like wearing rose-colored glasses, but this positively biased interpretation is exactly what helps reduce the intense uncertainty of being apart. Section 4. How communication media matters. Naturally, all these adaptations don't happen by magic. They happen through the digital tools we use every single day. Our communication media actually constrain us in 3 very distinct ways, which forces us to adapt our dynamics. First, there's cue multiplicity. Does the app give you facial expressions, tone of voice, or just text? Second is synchronicity. Are you chatting in real time, or is there a huge delay? And third is mobility. Are you stuck at a desktop, or are you quickly texting from your phone in the drive-thru line? When researchers tracked daily interactions, the data revealed something super fascinating. Watch what happens as the cues and synchronicity drop, like when you switch from a video call down to a basic text message. The behavioral adaptation of self-disclosure drastically spikes. Because you lack tone of voice and real-time feedback in a text, you actually compensate by pouring way more intimate, personal weight into the words you're typing. It's a total paradox. Because of this effect, couples actually lean incredibly hard on highly mobile, asynchronous text-based media. Why? Because mobility allows for what researchers call interstitial interactions. Basically, it lets you inject frequent, highly nuanced disclosures into the tiny little leftover gaps of your daily routine. A quick text on the bus or right before a meeting keeps that intimacy engine firing all day long, totally bridging the geographical divide. Section 5. The language of reunion. Eventually, the distance closes. And once we bridge that gap, we have to navigate the language of catching up. Think about the literal moment you finally see that long-distance friend again. We almost always throw around this super common idiom, long time no see. We use it completely innocently, and Merriam-Webster just defines it as an informal greeting. But believe it or not, this simple, grammatically quirky phrase has a surprisingly complex and heavily debated history. Section 6. Navigating inclusive communication. As we seek to maintain intimacy, we absolutely have to be mindful of inclusive language and the hidden weight our words carry. So, there's actually a really fascinating, ongoing debate among linguists about the origins of long time no see. Because it totally ignores standard English grammar, experts trace its roots to Pidgin English, but they're split on where it came from. One valid historical argument points to it being a humorous, potentially mocking interpretation of a Native American greeting. But another, equally valid argument, says it's a direct, word-for-word translation of the Mandarin Chinese phrase, haozhou bujian. On one side of the aisle, some observers point out that the phrase is really just a harmless, direct, structural translation. The argument here is that because it so perfectly mirrors Mandarin syntax, its integration into modern English is just a natural, neutral evolution of language mixing. They argue it shouldn't be considered offensive at all. But on the flip side, major linguistic institutions are taking a much more cautious approach. Oxford Dictionary, for example, has actually highlighted the phrase's potential to be hurtful to people of Asian or Native American descent. They classify it right alongside other words with offensive origins that are rooted in mocking non-native English speakers. So, what are we supposed to do with all of this? Well, rather than just picking a side or outright banning words, educators are treating this as a powerful teaching moment. Bringing debated terms like this out into the open can actually foster real empathy and awareness. It forces us to think critically about why we say what we say, and it reminds us that language is a living, breathing, and sometimes pretty messy thing. Ultimately, whether it's through screen or standing face-to-face, communication is entirely about connection. As one commentator put it perfectly, if our words begin to alienate rather than unite, if enough people feel a phrase is hurtful, then the entire goal of intimacy is lost. We have to be willing to adapt our vocabulary to ensure the person across from us feels validated and respected. We adapt our behaviors, we idealize our partners, and we squeeze these massive, deep emotions into tiny text messages just to keep our relationships alive across the miles. We work so incredibly hard to bridge the physical gap. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. Knowing all of this, how intentional will you be with your communication and the very words you choose the next time you finally reconnect?